raise money. That's why I didn't run this year. I think my primary job right now is to invent a generation of solutions. And I've been talking with people like crazy. So the question is, I mean, McCain is migrating in the right direction. McCain certainly migrated in the right direction in energy. And you know, and then he sort of doubled down his bet by picking Sarah Palin. I mean, you know. The only point I've been making in the campaign, which I think is probably going to work, is that he can't possibly be for this package. I mean, it's crazy to pick Palin and run as the outside real reform, true change campaign and vote for this. And again, I think either Mark or Jim can tell you, if McCain is our nominee, comes out against this package, that is a genuine historic moment, and you suddenly have the president and his secretary of treasury over here, and you have McCain over here, and then if you get truly lucky, you'll have Obama defend the package, and then you could have the Bush-Obama package for taking away your money. I have McCain over here. At that point, you really will have an exciting election. Yes, ma'am.
One of the Republicans' problems is they've always been inordinately inept at explaining things.
Yes.
And they still are speaking in sound bites and not giving coherent, clear explanations. And without the explanations, people won't do anything. You've got to tell them why, not just let's go do this, but why should we do this? And Republican candidates and office holders don't seem to explain enough.
Yep. It's the great difficulty. The other side is the party of Hollywood, trial lawyers, union elected officials, and academics, and so they like words. And the other side's the party of language. We're the party of management and professionalism. And so we like neat, orderly, structured things, and we have neat, orderly meetings. They like talking. Well, you know, if you're in the business of persuasion, there's a certain advantage to talking. It's no accident that the greatest Republican leader of the last half century was an FDR Democrat who was a movie actor. I mean, he had every possible advantage. He understood their side. He understood the power of words. He worked at it very hard. Huh?
He was Irish.
And he was Irish. And he worked at it. I'm half Irish. And he worked at it very hard. I mean, this was not an accident. I recommend to all of you an amazing book called The Education of Ronald Reagan, which talks about Reagan's years at General Electric. And it changed my view. I'd known Reagan since 1974 in terms of doing things. And I saw him totally different after I read this book. I mean, it's a very interesting book about what he learned in the 8 years that he worked for General Electric, and the way in which he thought about not being a great communicator, but being a great educator. It's a very profound book. One or two last questions. Yes, sir.
But so many of our Republican leadership actually believes in this fallacious view of Republican socialism.
Right. Well, we either re-educate them or we beat them. Now, look, I am today where Reagan was in the late 60s, okay? My view is we are once again back building from the ground up, creating a system that's going to say, if there's a great line about, at one point, Jim Baker tried to explain to Reagan why they needed another tax increase. And it's a New York Times story where Reagan took off they're in the cabinet room, and Reagan took off his glasses and he looked and he said, Jim, if you really believe that, why are you in this administration? And Baker left and said to Dick Darman, we're never raising taxes again while he's president. It's over. Okay, I think you have to decide what your principles are, and you have to set out to rebuild the party from the ground up. And frankly, that's why I created American Solutions, is that, in my judgment, the majority model that will fundamentally change the country will end up being about 80% of the Republicans, about 70% of the independents, and about 50% of the Democrats. When we did the petition drive on Drill Here, Drill Now, Pay Less, we have over 100,000 people who've signed up as Democrats for more energy at lower prices. When you see things changing out there, there are new patterns beginning to evolve, and I think we need to offer a red, white, and blue pattern. Not an automatic red versus blue pattern, but then we've got to be equally tough with our own side. I mean, we got to say, look, we're going in this direction, and if you don't want to go in this direction, that's fine, but maybe you need to go find a new career, because you're not going to have much of a career here. One or two last ones. Yes?
Mr. Speaker, do you think the package is going to pass?
Do I think the package? No, I think the package is going to die. I believe what Jim said a while ago is really important. The great genius of the Founding Fathers was they wanted to avoid a dictatorship, and so they designed a machine so inefficient that no dictator could force it to work. If this were a parliamentary system, that would have been driven through in 2 days. The problem you have with really bad legislation is the longer it's out there, the worse it smells. And I believe the pattern is building, and I mean, you can feel it in the emails, you can feel it in the conversations. People are beginning to figure out this baby is dead, and we better start talking about the next one, because this one, it's not a question about fixing this one's gone. Now, it's not fully there yet. I'm telling you what I sense. I wouldn't have said that this morning, but I've had enough emails and enough conversations with House Republicans today to realize that they are actively moving away from the package. And they're figuring out this is going to be a real brawl. And I think the Democrats, looking at the polling numbers we released today and the polling numbers their own pollsters are giving them, they're all sitting there saying, let me get this straight. It's 6 weeks to an election. You want us to give Bush's Secretary of the Treasury $700 billion when the American people are mad at us? So we get to go home and say, yes, we spent $700 billion of your money through Paulson, and the Republicans aren't going to be there to provide cover? And I think that you just watch the attrition set in. And then now they have a problem, because what Paulson has done, to his credit, is he's elevated the idea we ought to have a package. Now I'm going to argue, yes, you want a package for economic growth, energy independence, and a workout on finance. But you do want a package. Now the left has got to say, oh, can we really go home without passing a package? And they've already seen their numbers collapse. And they've already seen the generic vote collapse. And all of a sudden they got a question of, can Pelosi and Reid actually go home having done nothing without becoming the Congress that did no drilling anywhere, the Congress that did no solution anywhere, the Congress that fixed nothing anywhere, and suddenly the issue becomes a McCain-Palin Republican Party prepared to reform Washington versus these guys who have failed totally. And so they really are on a knife edge of what it is they're going to do next, and I think it's a big challenge. Let me know, just give the last one. Yes, sir.
Handicap November 4th.
Depends on who wins the argument. Margaret Thatcher had a great rule. First you win the argument, then you win the vote. If John McCain can figure out how to explain that he is genuinely the taxpayer's defender, and if he can figure out how to explain that he hasn't done any of this stuff that involves business as usual and the establishment as usual, and he doesn't care who gets mad at him, he is going to defend the taxpayer. If he carries that off, and people decide it's real, and then remember that Obama's advisors are two of the last heads of Fannie Mae, one of whom got $90 million, Clinton's former director of the budget. And Clinton's former assistant attorney general got $76 million from Fannie Mae. And Obama was the #2 recipient from Fannie Mae, the #2 recipient from Freddie Mac, the #2 recipient from Lehman, which for a freshman is pretty good. And his major fundraiser in Chicago owned a bank which went broke on subprime, leaving 1,400 people without their savings. I mean, there's a moment when you all of a sudden go, got it. This is a real mess. He's the wrong guy. That's all you need to get. And at that point, you win the election. Now, if he can't do that, then the natural bias against the Republicans, given the mess that we're in, will defeat him. And if he is seen as Bush's successor in any significant way, he will lose. If he is seen as the conservative, anti-waste, anti-Washington, anti-spending defender of the taxpayer, my hunch is he'll win and may win by a surprising margin.
Will he talk to you before Friday?
I talk to his campaign all the time. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, he's also an adult, and he's 72 years old, and he's going to do what he does. I mean, this is a guy who, I'll close this, but it's really true. I used to tell people, if 5.5 years of the North Vietnamese did not intimidate you, why do you think you're going to? I mean, I think you can talk to John, you can encourage him. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. I mean, the three people he reminds me of are Andrew Jackson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Harry Truman. I mean, he walks in a room and he is who he is, and he's the best version of who he is he can be, and he ain't going to be a lot better, and he ain't going to be a lot worse. But I'll tell you, he was dead August a year ago, and he got himself in an airplane and he went to 100 town hall meetings, and he was alive. That ain't a bad start for this particular campaign. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.